Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Today, inshallah, we will have and discuss a new chapter from A Tale of Two Cities. The title of the chapter, The Trail of Charles Donnie. The place, the Old Bailey Court in London, England. Time 5 years later, the year 1780. Mr. Attorney General accused Donnie of collecting information about England for the benefit of France. In this chapter, my dear students, we will see the first trial of Charles Donnie. He was accused of collecting information and passing secret information about England for the benefit of France. Let's start with the summary of that chapter, then we will move to the questions and answers. 5 years had passed and Dr. Manet regained his health, returned to practicing medicine, and lived happily with his daughter in London. 5 years passed after he had been released from prison, of course. England had been at war with the Americans for 5 years but France was helping the Americans and England was losing her battles. There was a trial at the Old Bailey Court, a trial of treason. The accused man was Charles Donnie. Charles Donnie was charged with passing government secrets about the English army to the French king. The Attorney General accused Donnie that he had collected information about the English troops that were going to the English colonies in North America. There were 6 witnesses against Donnie. They were John Parsett, Roger Clay, Mr. Laurie, Lucy Manet, Dr. Manet, and a 6th witness. Mr. Laurie, Miss Manet, and Dr. Manet were called to testify against Charles Donnie because they had met him on board the ship that carried them from Calais to Dover 5 years ago, when they were moving to Dr. Manet secretly from Paris. That's the starting of the relation between Charles Donnie and the family of Dr. Manet. They first met him on the board of the ship that had taken Dr. Manet and Lucy Manet from France to England after he had been released from prison, of course. Donnie's lawyer was Mr. Stryver, and his assistant was Mr. Sidney Carlton. These are the first time we see these characters. Mr. Stryver, that's the lawyer who will defend Charles Donnie, and his assistant, the brilliant lawyer, Mr. Sidney Carlton. The first witness, John Parsett, said that he discovered that Donnie was a spy because he found lists of the movements of the English troops in his house. But Mr. Stryver proved that Parsett was an ex-convict and a gambler and spied his witness. The second witness, Roger Clay, was Donnie's servant. He said that he had seen Donnie papers and lists of the troops and military equipment that England was sending to North America. He also said that he saw him give these papers to some Frenchmen on the boat. He was giving these papers to some Frenchmen on the boat that travels between Dover and Calais. But Mr. Stryver proved that Roger Clay was a thief and was once working for the French government himself, and therefore his witness was spoiled. This is the second witness. The third witness was Mr. Laurie. The Attorney General asked Mr. Laurie if Charles Donnie was one of the passengers traveling with him in the mail coach from London to Dover 5 years ago. But Mr. Laurie said that it was so dark to identify him. Mr. Laurie also said that he had met Charles Donnie on the boat that brought them back to England, but he hadn't spoken to him as he spent all his time in his cabin. The fourth witness saw Mr. Donny, Mr. Laurie said that he hadn't got any idea about Charles Donny or what he was doing on the boat. So his witness was also spoiled by the words of uh, uh, Mr. Laurie. The fourth witness, Miss Mannett, didn't want to say anything against Charles Darnley, but the solicitor pushed her to tell the jury what she had seen. She said that the accused met two French gentlemen and she saw him exchange papers with them. At that time, she didn't know Charles Donny. She said the truth. She said that she had seen him exchange papers with them. He told her that he had been traveling on important business and he was working under a false name because his business would get some people into trouble. Of course, he was honest. He was saying the truth because he was going to live in England under a false name after he had left France and he left his property and he will leave the family name because he felt that he will be ashamed if he still keeping that name evermore. The fifth witness, Dr. Manet, said that he couldn't remember anything about that period of time or what had happened on board the ship. You remember that at the time, Mr. Dr. Manet was in very bad condition after he had been released from the prison. The sixth witness testified that on that Friday night in 1775, he had seen Donnie waiting for someone in a hotel in the town near where the two passengers had left the mail coach. The Attorney General tried to convince the jury that Donnie was exchanging secret military information with those men. Sidney Carlton, Stryver's assistant, had something to spoil that witness. He sent Mr. Stryver a piece of paper telling him to ask the witness to look at Sidney Carlton and say whether he was the man collecting the information or the accused man, Charles Donny. The witness was confused. Both men looked exactly the same. He couldn't tell which was which. Sidney Carton had a very brilliant idea. He used the resemblance that he is looking like Charles Darnley. Okay, so he used that resemblance so as to make the witness seems that he is confused. He couldn't know or he couldn't recognize who which is which, who couldn't tell which was which, or if he had seen that man or that the other man. Mr. Silver summed up his defense saying, John Parsard was a liar. Roger Clay was a hired spy and a traitor. Lucy couldn't recognize the papers. Mr. Laurie and Dr. Manet saw nothing. The sixth witness couldn't identify the prisoner, and the lists that were found in Donnie's house weren't in his handwriting, which proves that the accusation was a trap for the prisoners, for the prisoner, for family reasons in France. And we know that his uncle, I think his uncle was standing behind that false accusation against his nephew. He wanted to put him in prison because he was because of his honest and honorable situation towards the peasants and poor people in France. At last, the jury declared that the prisoner was not guilty. When the crowds left the courtroom, Sidney Carlton invited Charles Donnie to dine together. They went to a nearby tavern and Donnie thanked Carlton warmly. Carlton said, "You don't have to thank me. It was nothing, but it must feel good to have such a beautiful young lady as Lucy manage pity and cry for you." Now you see that Sidney Carlton envied Charles Darnley that he had a very beautiful lady that she cried and she had a pity and she cried for him. It was clear that Donnie and Carlton fell in love with Lucy. Carlton envied Donnie when Lucy felt pity for him in the courtroom. Carlton told Donnie that he was disappointed with life. He was a failure at everything and that he cared for nobody and nobody cared for him. No blue eyes would fill with tears for him as Lucy Mannix did for Donnie. Donnie advised him to make better use of his brilliant talents and left. Later that evening, Sidney Carlton went to Mr. Stryver's office to help with some legal papers. Although Stryver was a popular and successful attorney, the truth was that his brilliance in the courtroom came about as a result of his evening's works with Carlton, whose brilliant mind solved many of Stryver's cases. So, without the brilliant mind of Sidney Carlton, so many cases wouldn't achieve success as they had with Stryver, the lawyer. Stryver asked Carlton what gave him the idea of the lookalikes, and Carlton said, "I just thought that Donnie was a handsome fellow and that I might have been like him if had some luck." Trevor told him that success and happiness don't come out of luck, but rather out of hard work. He advised Carlton to try to help himself a little, as he never even tried to do that. Carlton was happy to help others, but never himself. He was that way when he was at the law school, and he is that way when he is a lawyer. He is going to be the same way in love. He will help Charles Darnley, but he will not help himself. Let's go to the questions and answers, and I want you, my dear students, to keep the answers by heart from the early beginning of the chapter. What was Charles Darnley accused of? Of course, he was accused of being a spy who collected information about the English army for the benefit of France. I told you before, my dear students, that the questions may come in different words and the answer will be the same. So take care of this point. Who were the witnesses? They were John Parsard, one, Roger Clay. 2, Mr. Laurie. 3, Dr. Manet. 4, Lucy. 5, Manet. Lucy, Manet, and the sixth witness. Okay. Why did Mr. Laurie, Lucy, and Dr. Manet become witnesses? Because they had met him on the same boat that had taken them from France to England 5 years ago. It could be, this question may come in different ways. What's the relation between Charles Donny and Lucy Manet, Dr. Manet, and Laurie at that time? Is there any kind of relation? Yes, they had just met him on the same boat that had taken them from France to England 5 years ago. So the words of the questions may vary, may come in different words. The question may come in different words, but the answers will be the same. How was Sidney Carton's presence at the court of great importance? Or could be, how was the resemblance between Charles Donny and Sidney Carton was very helpful in the trail of Charles Donny. The same answer. Sidney Carton, the assistant of the lawyer, looked exactly the same as Charles Donny. This helped Mr. Stryver spoil the witness of the sixth witness, who was confused and couldn't tell which one of the two young men met the two people and exchanged the information with. Where was the trail of treason? It was at the Old Bailey Court in London. Question number 6. What advice did Donny give to Sidney Carton? He advised him to try to use his talents better and to care for people in order to find friends around him. Once there was a question that was in the final first term exam, who stands for the jackal and who stands for the lion in the story? And we said that Sidney Carton stands for the jackal. The jackals is the one who helps other but he doesn't help himself. And who stands for the lion? Of course, the Sidney Carton, Stryver stands for the lion because he gains the fruits of Sidney Carton's intelligence in the cases that they discuss together in the evenings. Yes. If you want to know why I am getting drunk, it is because I am disappointed with life. Comment. Of course, these words were said to by Sidney Carton to Charles Darcy after the trail of Charles Darnley. Sidney Carton said this to Donnie in the tavern after the trail. You can change this word. Instead of tavern, you can say the cafe or in the inn. So Sidney Carton said this to Donnie in the cafe after the trail. Carton invited Donnie invite Donnie for the many friends who cared for him. He also invited him when he notes that Lucy cried and felt pity for him. You might have made better use of your brilliant talents. Comment. Charles Donny said this to Carton in the tavern, in the cafe, after the trail. Carton had declared that he never liked anybody. Donny didn't know that Carton saved his life for the sake of Lucy and to help Mr. Stryver, the lawyer. He advised him to use his talents to make a better life for himself. You are content to help others, but never yourself. Comment. Mr. Stryver said this to Sidney Carton, who was upset because he never had any luck in his life and wished he would be happy like Charles Donnie. Mr. Stryver reminded him that he had always been like a jackal, working hard for the benefit of others. The jackal here, it's the one that who works to help others, but he couldn't help himself. And I said that we had a question in the final exam, first term exam, 2 years ago. Who stands for the jackal and who stands for the lion and why? And we said that Sidney Carlton standing for the jackal and Stryver stands for the lion. I care for no man and no man cares for me. Carlton said this to Donnie in the tavern in the coffee after the trail. He confessed that he never cared for anyone and no one seemed to care for him. Last question. Mr. Stryver was the mouth that voiced Carlton's intelligence explained. That's right. Stryver was a popular and successful attorney, but it was all because of Carlton's intelligence. All the success that Stryver had at the courtrooms came about as a result of his evening's work with Carlton, whose brilliant mind solved many of Stryver's cases. Here are extra questions if you want to discuss. Sidney Carlton gave himself to the benefits of others. Explain. That's the same answer for that question. Yeah, that's right. Trevor was a popular and successful attorney, but it was all because of Carlton's intelligence, all the success that Trevor had. As I told you that the question, the words of the questions may vary, but the answer may be the same. Why did Carlton envy Charles Darnley? Because Lucy Manet will fall in love with him. Who was the accused man? Charles Darnley. What was he accused of? He accused of collecting information to the about the English troops that were traveling to the American colonies. Why were Mr. Laurie, Lucy, and Dr. Manet called as witness? Because they had just met him on board of the boat that had taken them to from Dover to England. Okay, now that's enough for today. And if you have extra questions, just send it to me and write your comments about this chapter. And if you have any comments, I will be ready to answer your comments and your questions. Thank you very much. Till we meet again in the next chapter. Mr. Mahmoud was with you from Al Andalus School. Till we meet again, I wish you the best of luck. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel to have the new chapters and the new item that I will send to you. Thank you very much.